Hello, my name is Connor, and I'm going to show you how to mount a duplex receptacle to a 4-square industrial cover. Start off, I like to get my receptacle prepared and get pigtails on it. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and put some hooks on our wires, as you typically would do. Alright, we've got our hooks and our wires. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to snip the tabs off of this receptacle. These are only necessary when mounting against a box, but since we're mounting to the cover plate itself, these won't be necessary and they will actually get in the way of mounting the cover plate. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these off real quick. You can bend these off. I prefer to use my diagonal cutters, at least for the ears. Line that up. Alright, we've got those ears cut off. Now, the receptacle comes with screws. We are going to use these screws, but we won't need them attached to the receptacle at this point. So we're going to go ahead and take those off. Set those screws aside. Alright, let's get our pigtails on there. So I always like to screw in the terminals that I won't be using. So that's going to be the bottom ones in this case. These receptacles use a number 1 Robertson bit, by the way, which is a number 1 square, if you haven't ever heard of Robertson. They can use Phillips, but I find they tend to strip out, so I prefer to use the Robertson. Get that nice and snug. Alrighty. Now we're going to start just with our hot. Get that around the brass screw, not the silver screw. And these receptacles, the NEMA spec for these, NEMA/UL spec for these is 12 inch-pounds. So I have a Torx screwdriver here to make sure I get to exactly that tightness. If you don't get these tight enough, it can cause arcing and overheating, which can eventually melt the receptacle and potentially cause a fire. That click was the sound of the Torx screwdriver reaching its desired torque. Make sure when putting your hooks around these terminals that you are putting them around in a way that the copper goes counterclockwise when you start to twist the screw in. The other way around could cause the wire connection to not be so great. Before I tighten that down, I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. All right. Nice and torqued. All right, let's do our ground last. All right. Now, to kind of neaten things up, I like to bend my wires up and out of the way. So start with our hot and neutral, get our ground, and then I'll just put my finger behind them like this and then bend them over my finger. And that kind of just gives them a little bit of a something to bend against. All right, so we got our pigtail. This can really be these pigtails can really be however long you want. I'm leaving it long here for brevity's sake, but whatever you prefer. All right, so our receptacle is all prepared. Now we are going to get the cover ready. So you'll notice that this cover plate has a couple of tabs that we're going to have to break off. These are going to be the nuts that mount the receptacle on the back end to the cover plate. So let's go ahead and bend those off real quick. So you could really get them started with your finger. Just push them in. Grab them close to where they attach to the cover, and then just wiggle it back and forth till they pop out. Doesn't take much effort. All right. Now we are going to take our industrial cover and a receptacle. We are going to line them up as so. And then, unfortunately, this screw is not Robertson, so we have to use a Phillips too. We are going to screw in this middle screw to help get things nice and aligned. Now, code requires at least 2 screws for the receptacle, unless if the receptacle is listed with only 1 screw. In this case, they provided holes and tabs for us to use, so we're going to use all 3 screws to mount our receptacle. So we're going to go ahead and take those screws we took off the receptacle earlier and push them through. Wherever I put that second one, there it is. I'm going to be holding that with those in with my thumb. And then we are now going to screw those into the threaded holes on those little nuts we just broke off. Now it shouldn't take much effort. I'm just going to get one of them started, and then I'm going to go to the next one. All right. Now we've got those little tabs are now threaded in initially. So I'm going to use my screwdriver, and we're just going to go ahead and tighten those down. Sometimes these small 4 square covers can be a little fiddly. Get that nice and tight. I can do this next one. And when I'm screwing these in, I'm making sure to hold a little bit of pressure on this back portion. If you don't, the nut likes to spin around and get caught on the plate and cause the screw to become like cocked and weird. So I like to hold it in place with my index finger while I actually turn the screw. Alrighty, now we have a receptacle made up to a 4 square industrial cover. Now you would just connect your pigtail to the actual branch circuit conductors and mount that to a 4 square junction box, and you would be good to go. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something.